joining us once again to continue bringing us up to date on the ramifications of the saga of Edward Snowden. Of course, he is the NSA leaker. He's wanted by the United States government for a violation of our federal laws. Some say he's committed treason. Of course, the warrant, I don't believe, charges treason, but several countries have been approached by him seeking asylum, and a couple have acquiesced and said, sure, come on in. We now have Venezuela. Russia telling Snowden that Venezuela might be your last chance, so you better hightail it out of here and get over to Venezuela. But now we have another entry into the mix, and it's Cuba. Joining us now to once again bring us up to date on what all this means and what the legal ramifications are is international attorney, senior principal at McNabb Associates, Douglas McNabb. Hey, Doug, how are you, sir? I
am excellent. What a great book this is going to make.
Well, I hope you're going to write it, and I hope if you do, we get the first interview. I want to see the movie. You could play yourself in the movie.
I think I would love to.
All right, so he's still. We're led to believe, and there's no information to the contrary, at least public information, that he's still in the same place he was, I guess, 2 weeks ago when that plane took off from Hong Kong and landed in Russia. He's never been admitted into the country. He's still sitting there, in the unofficial, the never wasteland kind of, which isn't really Russia. And he's sitting there, and he's still weighing his options, which apparently are narrowing. And one of the members of the member of the Russian parliament who speaks for the Kremlin yesterday basically said publicly, "You better go to Venezuela."
Well, I think I mentioned to you in one of our earlier conversations that at some point I think that President Putin is going to feel that Mr. Snowden is outstayed his welcome, and I think that that's very rapidly approaching. Venezuela, as you noted, has offered Mr. Snowden asylum, as has now Bolivia. Cuba is not offering asylum, but is saying basically, we think that it probably would be a good idea that Mr. Snowden is one who would qualify for that. What confuses me is I don't understand why Mr. Snowden hasn't accepted Venezuelans' offer. I know that he submitted applications to 21 states, including Russia. He then submitted 6 additional asylum applications, and they don't want to disclose who the 6 countries are for fear that the U.S. would get in the way of that. But he now has an offer to go to Venezuela, a country that he submitted an application to, and as you said, Moscow saying, "Listen, you need to take it." But he hasn't accepted anything as far as we know. His problem may very well be, look, I'm in the transit zone in Moscow. How do I get to Caracas? If he's in A, how do I get to B? Now, Steve, I must tell you, if I knew exactly how he could get from point A to point B, I'm not going to tell you because I can't.
Well, couldn't he? Well, but if, in other words, if a country offers him asylum, and he said if he goes to Venezuela, and they tell someone in the airport, okay, everyone knows he's there or wherever the heck he is. All right, he wants to go to Venezuela. Don't they escort him to a plane? Doesn't Venezuela send a plane or something?
Well, actually, that's 2 different questions. One, does he get on a commercial flight?
Right.
Or 2, does he get on a presidential plane? Both of which are very, very interesting, and this is where I think the movie is going to come into play. If he wants to get on a commercial flight, he's going to have a refugee travel document that would allow him to purchase the ticket and then get on to the commercial flight.
I love it. Yeah.
And it does that. If Venezuela has offered him asylum, and if he accepts the asylum offer, then presumably Venezuela would provide the refugee travel document where he could get on a plane. If Venezuela sends a presidential plane to pick him up, then he's not going to need to buy a ticket. He's just going to get on board. Now, what happens? What happens if he's on a commercial flight versus a presidential flight, and he's traveling from Moscow to, let's say, Caracas?
Right.
If he's on a commercial flight, is that commercial flight going to fly over either U.S. airspace, that's going to be a problem, or European airspace where they deny, where the European state denies the plane's entry into that airspace, as we saw with President
Bolivia,
of Bolivia, yeah. So that's going to be presumably he's going to have to get a flight that doesn't go over that airspace. So I guess maybe international waters, international airspace. On the other hand, if he's in a presidential plane, same thing. If he flew over, if he was on a Venezuelan plane, hypothetically, and he flew over U.S. airspace, could the U.S. send up jets and force him down? Yeah, from a legal standpoint, they could do that. Might Venezuela treat that as an act of war? Yeah, that could be a problem because the Latin countries were not at all happy with what they believe the U.S. did to down his plane in Vienna, Austria, to refuel.
Right.
So if the U.S. sends jets up to force the presidential plane down at Kennedy Airport, might the Latin countries then send some of their jets to protect the Venezuelan? Oh, this could get really bad. Yeah.
All right. Now let me ask you one final question. If you were advising him, and you could tell me why too. We only have about a minute left. Would you, if Cuba, and Cuba has not, but if Castro said you could come here, would you advise him to go to Venezuela or go to Cuba?
Can't do that. Pre-travel advice.
Good answer. I like that. All right. And one other thing. Do you think that President Obama would go back on his word not to scramble jets for a 28-year-old hacker if the opportunity presented itself?
I would be shocked, but this story is a continuing thought. I don't see the president doing that because of the potential ramifications that we could see from this.
All right, Douglas. As always, thank you. And if we're still, if he's in the air or he lands in a country, we'll have you back. And if not, we'll have you back next week if he's still in the airport. Hope he's got